Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. I brought you a gift.
Really?
Talk about
I
that.
like gifts. Is
Yeah,
it a
you
bottle? No?
No, it's not, but we can work on that later.
We gotta say hi. Are my parents in here? You gotta wave to my parents. You gotta wave, say hi to mom and dad.
Hi, Mom and Dad.
Hey, look,
Hey,
man,
wait, you and your dad have a similar hairstyle.
I mean, look who's talking.
I can say that.
Right. So look, I know I've been inundated with queries, as I know you are. So, for all the concerned folks in the room today, how's Dan doing?
So first of all, thanks for asking. Let's just start with this. I think it'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you to anybody and everybody who has expressed well wishes for Dan. I know his family appreciates it. I know Jennifer appreciates it. So I just want to say that to all of you out there, thank you for thinking about him and asking about him. We appreciate that. We put a statement out Monday night about where Dan was at and what was going on. We're literally 72 hours from him having a stroke, and that's public information. We know that. He is awake. He is responsive.
Good.
I saw him with my own eyes on Monday around noon. I talked with him. He knew I was there. He knew what I was talking about. And I think this soon after that, he's doing as well as he can be doing.
That's fantastic.
So that's an important piece of the puzzle. The other thing is that, and I've seen this mentioned a couple of times in a couple different places. There's two things I know about Dan. One is he is one tough human being, and he will come back as fast and as strong as anybody can in this particular situation. Number two, and I've heard him talk to you about this, he's a firm believer in talent, and he has built an incredible team. And we sat around the table yesterday, and we took a look around on the CEOs of all the businesses that we have. And so if there's anybody out there that's concerned that business isn't going to happen as usual, they should stop being concerned about that. We have years of work to do. Dan has created a culture. We have all, as leaderships, created a culture in an organization. We know what the mission is. We know what to do. We're executing on that mission. And he's taking a break. He's taking a hiatus. And when he comes back, things are going to be as good or better than they were when he left. And we're going to give him that opportunity. And we're going to give his wife the opportunity to spend the time she needs to spend with him so that they can get done what needs to get done to help him come back.
There you go. So you guys were big advocates of changes to insurance policy in the state of Michigan.
I heard a rumor about that.
And so the governor just left stage, and she did a phenomenal job, and she mentioned it. Talk about what this movement means, for your 17,000 folks that come to work every day, and what it means for business development in the city of Detroit. And also talk about, if you would, because we have a lot of stakeholders in the audience, how the public-private kind of partnership worked with our state legislature, with the mayor, and with you guys leading the private charge.
Sure. So, listen, first of all, solving a decades-long problem is something that everybody in Michigan should be proud of. When you think about auto insurance rates and where they were, I'll just give you a simple example. If you lived in Cleveland, Ohio, which is 2.5, 3-hour drive, you paid $800 a year roughly on average for your car insurance. If you lived in the city of Detroit, you were paying $4,000 or $5,000 or $6,000 for that.
I'm one of those people.
Same policy. Think about that. So what just occurred, number one, keeps team members that we have in the city of Detroit, as well as every other employer in the city of Detroit, there, a part of it. We hear from team members all the time on how expensive it is. You know that there are people that don't have insurance as a result of it. So that's a massive win for team members, number one. Number two, for the growth of a city and the growth of the state, when we would have conversations with folks about coming downtown, about moving downtown, one of the biggest things they brought up was, how are my team members going to be able to afford being able to do this? So the work and the economic impact that this will have to the region, I think, is massive from a talent attraction and a talent retention perspective. And then just think about everyday human beings. You have options now, you have choices now, and you have, a lot of people have health insurance, and so they can opt out of the unlimited coverage and literally cut their insurance bill in half. You want to talk about money back into your pocket or a tax break. Think about the magnitude of that. So I think it's absolutely It's a massive win for the state. I want to thank the governor for her leadership on this and the legislature for coming together in a bipartisan way to be able to end something that, frankly, every other state in the union had been able to do. And when you think about some of the fundamentals and the blocking and tackling that should be happening, we should be thinking about the future. We should be thinking about innovation. We should be thinking about what we're going to talk about here throughout this conference is how do we help education? Not something as basic as how do we solve something like auto insurance. But the fact that it's been done, I think is a huge deal for the state. And again, thank you to the governor and everybody that was involved with this. And as you know, Dan was a big proponent.
I think the governor is definitely to be commended. I mean, she ran on the fact that she had, in her political career, worked in a very bipartisan fashion.
Sure.
So I think the execution of this could not have been achieved were it not for that bipartisan approach. Both sides of the aisle had to work together.
I totally agree with that, and I also don't think it would have happened if she didn't personally get involved, and I think that's impressive to see so early on in administration.
So, Bill, as we talk about attracting and bringing people to Detroit, like I'm a firm believer, we shouldn't necessarily drink our own Kool-Aid. I mean, we know, those of us who are in Detroit is evolving once again. There's a lot of activity here. There's a lot of new companies coming here. But let us not be fooled. Around the country, our reputation is not where we want it to be. And I'm a firm believer, Bill, that if people come here and see it and experience it, they will immediately change their mind, even if it's just once. So there's a couple of interesting wins that we've had lately. One is the Forbes Under 30 Summit that's coming here in September, where you've got 10,000 thought leaders under the age of 30. You've got venture capitalists, educators, investors, all coming here. What does that mean to the city of Detroit?
So I would say a couple things on that. First of all, when you think about us being involved in the city and us coming down here, one of the things we always talked about was if we're literally just going to be in a scenario where people come from the suburbs and they go to work and then they turn around and go home and they don't hang out in Detroit, we might as well stay in the suburbs. Right? So we've been focused so much on what's happening there. And anybody who wants to do business with us or anybody who's thinking about that, we absolutely make them come to town. You can't possibly fathom what's happening and what's going on by what you read, what you hear. You have to come and experience, you have to touch it, you have to taste it, you have to see the evolution. And so when you can have something like Forbes Under 30 and you can have a lot of millennials, right? I mean, the largest generation in the history of generations being here, seeing what's going on, wandering around the city, getting engaged, seeing the energy level that's in this city. It pales in comparison to anything else we could possibly do. And so, we've been doing this for years from an intern perspective. We have somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 interns every single year that we bring downtown and pay. We do it for a few reasons. One, selfishly, because this is the youth of America, and they actually know what's going on from a technology perspective, so we learn a ton from that. But two, they all go back to the universities. And they all go back and talk about what's going on in Detroit, and it starts to build on itself and feed on itself because you're here. So having an event like Forbes 30 Under 30 coming to this town for the next 3 years is just one more way for us to be able to showcase the fabulous things that are going on in the city of Detroit, and the things that are going to continue to come. And so we're going to be a proponent of bringing people here any chance we can, because you got to come, right? If you build it, they will come. You will see it when you believe it. You got to come here and see what's going on.
I agree. I mean, you see that happening with the Grand Prix, and thanks to Roger and others, that continues to be a success. What Jason Huvar has done with the Movement Festival downtown over Memorial Day weekend is huge. But we got something else coming up in about 30 days. It's a little golf outing, I think.
A golf tournament?
Yeah.
I've heard about that.
Tell us about your excitement around the Rocket Mortgage Classic.
You know what? I can't tell you how fired up we all are about the Rocket Mortgage Classic. I mean, think about this. The first time in the history of Detroit that there will be a PGA event in the city limits of Detroit. We have a lot of great golf courses in the area, right?
I got to thank you because I live over there, so I think my property values are going to go up.
Well, you're a member there too, right?
I am.
I mean, I was a member there years ago. I know your dad's a member there. I mean, it's a phenomenal golf course. It's a 120-year-old golf course. Beautiful Albert Kahn clubhouse, and the work that's been done that's gone into that clubhouse. A Donald Ross designed golf course that the players are very excited about coming and seeing because, I mean, they play the same TPC tournament, golf tournaments year round, right? So they don't get a chance to come and do this. And so the buzz that we've heard about the players and what's happening on the tour has been off the chain. We've got a phenomenal field. But obviously Ricky Fowler's our guy, and he's a great golfer. Dustin Johnson was #1 in the world, happened to lose that to Brooks Koepka. That happens sometimes. Bubba Watson. I mean, you could go down the list of major champions that are coming to this event. There's still the outside hope and shot that maybe that guy who just won the Masters might show up, but I think
my dad said he's going to call him.
Please do, by all means. We'll pull out any stop that we can. As a matter of fact, as crazy as the situation is for me to be here, actually, I was supposed to be in Columbus because he's out playing Jack's tournament, making my one last pitch to him, but this was way more important to be here. So, but it's also, the thing that the PGA does so well is they raise money for local communities and for charities, right? And so, the greater Palmer Park is going to be a beneficiary of that, and we're committed to making sure that there's a benefit to that neighborhood.
Midnight golf?
Midnight golf, First Tee, the Detroit Golf Club Caddy Scholarship, yeah. The Detroit Children's Fund, which is trying to work so hard on some of the educational things that we're all going to be talking about here over the next couple of days. And then there's a group called Community Solutions, and that name may not mean much to people, but we have taken on the charge of their process called Built for Zero. And what they're really focused on is ending veteran homelessness in any market that they're in. And so we brought them into Detroit because homelessness is an issue regardless, but we thought this would be a good way for us to start on a little bit more manageable of a population, prove the concept out so that we could then take it beyond veterans. But if you can't, I can't imagine any other group of people who have sacrificed so much, who deserve the opportunity for us to take care of a problem that's been chronic for a long, long time, and they'll be a recipient and beneficiary as well. So, we're going to showcase this wonderful city the last weekend in June, and I hope a lot of people in this room are going to figure out a way to get there because it's going to be a great time. We're going to have a phenomenal viewing area. The golf course, 14, 15, and 16. It's a very tight area.
Right.
We're calling that the 313 area. If any player through the entire weekend, Eagles 14, 3. Hole-in-one on 15, 1. Birdie 16, 3. You guys all know 313. You've heard of it before, right? $350,000 to a charity of their choice. So we're going to have fun with it. We're going to activate it. We're going to have the Shot for Heroes, which raises money for veterans causes. We are going to make this the best stop on the tour, period, bar none. And by the way, new events just don't happen very often. There's one right after us. There's one in Minnesota called the 3M event. Trust me when I tell you that Detroit is going to show up better than Minnesota. That's all I'm going to say.
Bill, one of the things that's important to me that you guys have stressed in your releases and the execution as it relates to the Rocket Mortgage Classic is diversity as it relates to suppliers. So I guess I would ask you not only about that, but to further expound on kind of your diversity and inclusion efforts as a whole. Tanya Allen, who's somewhere in here, I'm sure, talks about D&I really standing for deliberate and intentional.
Right.
And that's the only way to get it done. So talk about how the family of companies approaches diversity and inclusion.
By the way, my good friend Tanya Allen, hope she's around here somewhere. I mean, what a phenomenal human being. I have the pleasure of working with her in the
She's right there. She's been quiet. She's right there. Hey, Tanya.
She loves the fact that she asked me about 4 months ago to be the board chair. I think she might be regretting that decision. I'm not sure. But listen, diversity and inclusion, it's a business imperative. I don't know how to say it any other way. An organization is not the organization it can be if you don't have diverse thought, diverse people interacting in different cultures coming together to really understand. It's a global world now, right? And so how can you possibly put your best foot forward if you're not thinking that way, if you're not being intentional about that? We have been very intentional to make sure that the folks that are participating in the Rocket Mortgage Classic are a great representation across the spectrum of vendors and suppliers because it matters. It matters to the city of Detroit. It matters to the people of Detroit. And so, we've been doing that in our business for years. But what a better way to resonate that and show that than doing that through the Rocket Mortgage Classic process. And so, we'll learn from this one this year, and we'll get better as we move forward next year. But as an overall organization, it's that important. It's just that important to us in the grand scheme of life and what we're doing every single day in the city of Detroit, which is, as we all know, it's 85% African American. And so if we're not out there doing the things that are necessary along those lines, we're missing the boat. And so how could you're just a better organization all the way around.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Talking about the city of Detroit, when I got out of law school, I went to go work for two guys, Charles Allen.
Not so bad. It's okay. You're a lawyer.
Don't hold it against
You still practice?
No.
Never did you?
No, never. I still pay my $365 for my membership though every year. But I worked for two guys, Charles Allen and Hansel Minyard, and they, from when we first started at their firm, talked about always doing well while doing good.
It's a great mantra.
And you guys have a saying where you talk about for more than profit.
Sure.
And it's kind of, I think, become a mantra of yours as it relates to doing well while doing good. Talk a little bit about your philanthropic efforts, because one of the things I always tell Dan is that, sometimes, the organization and he get beat up because people are like, oh, they're coming in and they're making all this money. But people don't really realize all that you're doing. The Classic is making it a little bit more public, but far before the Classic, the family of companies has given back to the community significantly.
So a couple of things on that. First of all, for more than profit, just about what we just talked about with diversity and inclusion. At the end of the day, you have for-profit entities, you have not-for-profit entities, and sometimes, unfortunately, for-profit entities just get a bad rap because they're corporate in nature, and they're generating revenue and making money, and people just think they're necessarily evil. They're not. There's some that are, but most of them are not. And when you think about investing back into the community that you live, work, and play in, and you have a cause, and you have a mission, and you have 17,000 team members who are focused around that mission called the City of Detroit and how we can help, it actually adds to your bottom line. So giving that money away and having people enthused about what's going on is actually better for your business. And so if you want to think about it that way as a business, be selfish then and do that. But so many times people get caught up in the spreadsheet of, if I give away this, do I get something back? Just, there's an old saying, the more you give, the more you get. Give just to give. And so I think that's a lot of the philosophy that we try to live by, and it cascades itself into a variety of different places. I mean, since we've come downtown, we've put over $200 million into a variety of philanthropic activities in and around the city of Detroit. One of the things, and this is the gift that I brought you, it's a little thing called our Neighbor to Neighbor report. I think anybody that's at this conference is going to have this delivered to them. We have a government office right down the main thoroughfare if you guys want to pop in and pick it up. But let's talk about what having a home means to someone, right? The home is what it's all about. It's what community's all built around. And yet, in the city of Detroit, we have had a tax foreclosure problem forever, for a long, long time. And so, we decided to take a different approach on this. And in 2017, we actually took about 300 or 400 of our own folks, and we went out and we did a little bit of surveying of about 3,500 homes and knocked on doors to ask people if they had any idea what was happening from a tax foreclosure perspective. Did they know about whether they were involved in that or not? And through that process, in just a small, non-scalable way, through a program that we now call Make It Home, we were actually able to help 80 people stay in their homes. And so in 2018, we accelerated that, and we partnered with United Community Housing Coalition. And we went out and picked up 30 different partners within all of the communities around Detroit. And we literally, through those groups, we funded it. Quicken Loans Community Fund funded it to the tune of about $1 million, $1.3 million. And we went out and there were 60,000 homes that were in that range that could have gone into foreclosure. And we knocked on every single door. And we got to about half of the folks, and we surveyed them, and we asked them, are you even aware that the tax foreclosure is a possibility for you?
And the numbers were crazy, right?
21% of the people who are primary homeowners had no idea. But think about this. about half of them are renting the house.
Yeah.
61% of them had no idea that the home they were renting, that they were paying rent on a regular basis, was on the verge of going to tax foreclosure because the owner wasn't making the taxes. And so through the same make it home process and the right of first refusal process that the city has, we were able to basically buy those homes from the city, give them to the United Housing Community Housing Coalition, and the folks that were renters, if they wanted to, they would be able to buy that home for the taxes that were delinquent, set up a payment schedule. And so we went from 80 to almost 600 homes that we were able to help through 2018, and we have a goal of another 1,000 in 2019. So the things... Thank you, but I mean, it's just the right thing to do. But the things you can do if you just get a little creative and you think about it. I mean, this is just a pure education process. If people don't have a clue, they don't know what's going on, and so how do we educate them? How do we give them the tools necessary? And one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle on that is that there's a property tax exemption. If your income is to a certain level, you don't have to pay taxes, and nobody knows about that, right? And so one of the things that, and when you do get that property tax exemption, it's only for that particular year. But there are so many homeowners that are back 2 or 3 years, and that still hangs around their neck. And so one of the things legislatively that we need to talk about is how do we take that property tax exemption and make it retroactive? Because and people say, well, that's going to take away revenue from the city or the county. It's such a small percentage of the money that they use that they wouldn't even miss it. So much other stuff to be done there. I mean, we could talk about, from a workforce development perspective, Breithoff and what we've done there, and the lead investment that we made there, so that we can generate opportunities for people to be in the skilled trades, hospitality, mechatronics. I mean, all kind, auto repair. Randolph is doing that with the skilled trades. There's so many job opportunities. I mean, just think about what Fiat Chrysler just announced in that plant and the number of jobs that they're going to have. We have to find a way to get more people trained. We need more training facilities to get that done. We're committed to it, but we need everybody kind of rowing in the same direction, and having those facilities be in the city of Detroit so Detroiters can take advantage of them. Because, listen, and I've heard Dan talk about this before, right? Four key pillars: blight, safety, jobs, education, right? So blight, safety, and jobs have some positive momentum. We're not anywhere near close. And then the fourth one is education. And we have a long way to go there, right? But jobs and the creation of jobs and making sure that they are going to Detroiters has got to be paramount for if the city wants to stay on the trajectory it's on, we have to come up with those solutions, and we have to employ Detroiters.
So interesting. So you talked about what's going on at Bright Hop. To me, that's near and dear. Obviously, we have hospitality business downtown. And, when we first came into the marketplace, Wright and Company had just opened. Sure. Maybe a year or so ahead of us, and we were working with Jeremy to see who was going to be, second into the market.
Yep.
And I think he opened Townhouse a month or so before us. But for a while, there were 3 of us downtown. Now there's dozens, maybe over 100 new restaurants in the greater downtown area, and people are beginning to see a deficit in terms of talent. So I think the investment at Bright Hop will be incredible.
Well, but the other thing, I think this is the other thing that's happened in the past, if we have too much of something, then that's not good for the current business. You guys are doing better because there's 100 restaurants down there than you were when you had 3, because of the foot traffic and the things that are going on and the destination that it's become, right? There's so much opportunity for everybody. And so we just got to realize that.
It's a very true story. But we talked about this. We ran into each other a couple months ago, and he and Dan, and they asked how we were doing at the restaurant. I told them that, we were up, a couple points over last year, going into our 4th year, which is incredible because there are dozens of more hospitality options, within a block or 2 of our location. So I agree. I think the rising tide in this instance does raise all ships.
And the one other thing I want to make sure we don't miss when we talk about some of this stuff is the entrepreneurship and the entrepreneurs that are in the city of Detroit, and how important that is to the comeback of the city. The jobs that are created by those small business owners. And one of the things that we try to do to foster that is Detroit Demo Day.
Yeah, coming up.
Right, coming up, applications closed out on April 22nd, over 500 applications. We'll pick 15 finalists on June 4th. They'll present on June 14th.
At the Fillmore, right?
At the Fillmore, yeah, at the Fillmore. This is the third year we're doing this. There'll be 7 winners, and they'll be awarded somewhere between $50,000 and $300,000, depending upon their business and their pitch. But it goes beyond that. There's the support that we constantly give to these entrepreneurs, and the folks that were in the 18 class, they've seen their revenue up 41%, and their sales up 51%. And so, all of that stuff mingled together is so critically important to the ecosystem of the city.
Quickly, so sale of Greektown Casino, it's final. You guys, I think, have said publicly that the net proceeds from there you're going to use to reinvest in the city of Detroit. Some people are wondering about the commitment to that side of downtown now that you're exiting the casino, but you've got a lot more plans for over there.
Yeah, so, it's interesting because I've known Dan a long time, and Dan is not typically a seller, right? But when you take a look at that particular line of business, I think it made sense for him to do that. The proceeds absolutely are going to go back into the things that we're doing, not only in the city of Detroit, but we're still committed to the Greektown area. As a matter of fact, and we're working on a few things in and around that area that we can't necessarily talk about yet. But if you think about the footprint, I think the mission has been, we started in a very geographically central area because that's just where we were, and starting to spread out a little bit, right? And Greektown is a part of that. We're not going to go anywhere away from that. We're over into the Corktown space now, and so it's a constant. How do we continue to move so that we can start to bridge the gap? We're investing in neighborhoods and doing things on a regular basis through the stuff that we just talked about, but the more that we can spread that out, the more we can close the gap between what's going on downtown and the neighborhoods, because you cannot have a successful city if the neighborhoods are successful and the downtown isn't, or vice versa. And so we're going to continue to work on that and continue to be in those neighborhoods and continue to move out.
That's fantastic. So, thank you. So, last week, I had the pleasure for the second time to go to space camp. Where my kids go to school, the 5th graders go to space camp in Huntsville, Alabama.
What is that?
And so it's crazy. It's like you learn to be an astronaut in 5 days.
Seriously?
As an 11-year-old.
Sign me up.
Yeah. So, but we fly into Nashville, and we take a 2-hour bus ride to Huntsville, and they show a movie. And so the movie we saw is Wreck-It Ralph. And so unless you have young kids, you're not familiar with that.
It's a great flick.
But so, there's a scene in Wreck-It Ralph where they go inside the internet, right?
Yep.
And so there are all these logos everywhere. Google, LinkedIn, Microsoft, some older app-related logos. And it just reminded me, sitting on the bus, squeezed into the corner by my 11-year-old watching this movie, that downtown Detroit is beginning to look like that. For those of you who have not followed the announcements and have not kept up with, all of the tech, traditionally West Coast, Silicon Valley, and San Francisco-based companies that are opening up shops here, it's incredible. And I think that we are quickly becoming, a tech hub of the Midwest. Talk about the importance of having these companies be located right downtown. So,
it's interesting. It was always the mission. Go all the way back to the Madison building, the first building that we bought, and wanting that to be a tech incubator. And, so some of the names that you mentioned, Microsoft is downtown, right? Amazon is downtown. LinkedIn just expanded out of the WeWork space in downtown. WeWork is downtown. StockX is part of the family. You could go on and on and on with a number of technology.
Now it's got $1 billion valuation as of recently. Congratulations.
Rumor on the street. I don't, can't confirm or deny that, but Waymo. Think about Waymo for a second, right? So Waymo, autonomous vehicles, West Coast. The fact that they are now in the city of Detroit and they're going to create autonomous vehicles. This is where the technology around autonomous vehicles needs to be. It's the car capital of the world, and so the fact that they're here, the fact that they're in the city, you want to talk about economic development? They could have been somewhere else. They could have been in the suburbs, right? They are now squarely planted in the city of Detroit, and that is a big deal. It's a big deal for the city. It's a big deal for the tech infrastructure. And it's something that we were very excited to be a part of. And it had nothing to do with the Bedrock building. It had nothing to do with anything else except it was the right place for Waymo to be. And so, that whole tech corridor, when you think about our area, you think about the automotive industry, you think about all of the tech companies. Quicken Loans is a massive tech company. We need the resources. We need people. We need talent to be able to plug into those places, right? And people are voting with their feet. They're coming to Detroit because they see what's possible. They see what we can do here, it's kind of a reshaping of what this city is all about. And that's why I think, because of the automotive industry and because it's been so strong here, that we're going to continue to push for the autonomous piece. We just rolled out last week Scoop, which is a carpooling app. Right. The only place they've been is on the West Coast. They're in Detroit now, and really at the end of the day, it's about mobility. And so, you can only have so many parking lots and so many garages, and building parking is not necessarily an economical thing. So we need to start changing behaviors. And so one of the things that we're doing at Bedrock, we're piloting this out, and actually the senior leaders at Bedrock, including myself. I'm not much of a rider. I'm more of a driver. So I'm going to put myself out there. If people want to ride with me, that's fine. I don't know, something about my personality, I just can't seem to ride in a car. But it's going to be an opportunity for us to have people change their habits, because you can get a lot done on a commute, and we can then free up parking. Every tenant that we talk to, every prospective tenant that we talk to, the number one thing they talk about is parking. Parking is an issue in every city, right? But because of the evolution in Detroit, we aren't quite there yet where people realize, by the way, a whole separate issue that we got to solve for is regional transit, mass transit. It's a separate topic for another day, but...
Next conference. I think we're taking a break this year.
But, there's just so much opportunity around those things, and technology is where it's at. It's here today, it's there tomorrow. You guys all have millennial kids, or whatever the heck the next generation is. They spend more time, they know more about this stuff than anybody in this room at a very early age. That's how they're going to interact. And so we've got to make sure that we're cutting edge as it relates to that. And I think there's a lot of that happening with what you're talking about.
When I got out of law school again and started thinking about saving money, I was able to go right downtown to see a gentleman at the time, Darnell Jackson. He was with Merrill Lynch, and open up. I had to beg him to open the account because I didn't have a lot of dough. So he made an exception. And I was able to go see my now financial advisor, walk over and see him. Years passed, and there was nobody downtown, no wealth managers downtown. And there's been a recent announcement that UBS is coming downtown, which I think is...
They're downtown. They're there. Their space has been built out. It's beautiful. They're literally right on Woodward Avenue. They're open for business. But that's a great thing for the city. But we've also seen our financial institutions come down. Fifth Third came down, and they're in the One Woodward building.
Chemical Bank is coming.
Chemical Bank is right. They're building a headquarters downtown. There's such a great presence of the financial industry, what people would think typical financial industry. And then there's this little thing called fintech. And I heard there's a company there that's kind of a small company called Quicken Loans. It's a little bit involved in fintech. So it's everything evolves. Even the financial services industry evolves, and it's great to see. But the UBS is a beautiful space. They did a very nice job downtown. But you can literally just walk down Woodward now and go talk to somebody, right? You're here. You're in that corridor. Couple of nice restaurants down there. I heard there was a nice hotel called the Shinola Hotel. That's
very nice.
Rumor on the street that's a pretty good place to check out. So it's just when you start thinking about what's going on up and down that street, it's pretty amazing.
Can we talk about, we've got just under 5 minutes left in our chat.
4 minutes and 34 seconds.
There you go. I, being a small business person and working through the challenges of hiring and training and maintaining good talent, I'm beyond impressed to see how your organization, and you touched on it very passionately when you were talking about the team that Dan has built of CEOs. But talk about the culture, because you guys are growing nonstop. You're continuing to seamlessly manage what you've got, and you're delivering still with excellence. And so what kind of culture have you established for that to be the case?
So a little history. So I started at Rock Financial in 1993, writing mortgages. And we had 100 people in the company and 25 loan officers. Today we have 17,000 people in the organization, the broader organization. And you can't grow a business by hoping it will happen. Even tactics and strategies to a certain point don't work if you don't have a culture that allows the team members in the organization to innovate, to create, to be a part of the solution. Because at the end of the day, when you're in a business like, well, take Quicken Loans, the flagship company. When you're in a business where you're interacting with consumers on a daily basis, the folks that are on the front lines doing that interaction have so much insight as to how your business is operating, where you might be able to improve, and if you don't have a methodology or a philosophy that allows people to tell you what's going on, right? That empowers people to communicate back to you what's happening and saying, hey, idiot, we got to fix this, right? That culture has existed since the day that I started there, and it's evolved and morphed over the years, where people are absolutely 100% aligned on who we are because we spend time. It's the first thing we do for people is we don't talk about what we do, we talk about who we are as an organization. And many of you have heard about the isms and all the things that go on with that, but that is I can't explain to you and express to you how important of a component that is. And it's that culture and philosophy that actually drove us to be in the downtown area. We talk about this a lot. We were in the suburbs and we were in a bunch of different places and we just weren't connected. And one of the incredible byproducts of being downtown is because we are all so close now. The efficiencies that we have, the business and the ability to communicate, the team members and their energy level around being in an urban core. It's a young demographic for us anyway. Average age is probably 31. So they're really purpose-driven and passionate about being in that core. And that's all just stems from a culture of it's innovation, it's disruption, it's thinking differently. How do you attack a problem in a different manner? It's ignoring noise because people will tell you, the naysayers will say, oh, you can't do that. I can't tell you how many times people say, you guys are nuts, you got a centralized model, you're doing the internet. You'll never make it in the mortgage business. We're the number one lender in the country now. So, you've got to stick to your guns and believe, but without a strong culture, I think it's really, really hard to scale. And if you're a business, especially for a small business person, right, I would invest early on in understanding what your culture is, defining what that is, because if you don't define it, it will define itself. Mm-hmm. And what defines itself may not be what you want, right? So I don't think there's anything more important that people can do than to truly understand who you are as a business and then embody that in every action that you take. My dad was a high school football coach, and I grew up on the football field, and I've heard a ton. But one of the things that always stuck with me, my dad said this forever, actions speak louder than words, right? Show up every single day, lead by example, and that manifests itself through a culture of competition, but also a culture of empowerment and innovation and execution.
That's fantastic. Well, look, I know that I'm speaking for everyone in the crowd. We wish Dan the best, speedy recovery.
Thank you.
To his family, this was fun. You've done an outstanding job. Thanks for being here.
Always fun to be with you. Always fun.
My man.
All right.